Hey guys, this is Meredith with Love Them, Train Them. We are introducing the video for the how to work with your dog when you go back home or go back to work. And we're gonna start this video in about 3 minutes now. So I'm just gonna give you guys time to log on. As you guys are getting organized and ready to sit down and listen to me talk, I wanted to encourage you guys to start to think of questions that you're going to be asking me. If there's any kind of delay in questions being asked or any kind of lack of questions, I have a list of ones that are really good ones for this topic. But I'm really interested in learning what you guys are interested in learning about this topic. So I strongly encourage you guys to comment with your questions. So again, we're just going to give you guys 2 more minutes to log on. So far we have 3 viewers. I'm going to give time for other people to log on right now. And as that's happening, I'm just going to get my questions up that I already have laid out. All right, so 1 more minute. And as you guys think of questions, feel free to type them in the comment box for me, and I will make note of them. So we're almost ready to begin. Almost ready. Get myself organized. Okay, so it's 6 o'clock, so we're going to get started. So again, the title of this webinar is Going Back to Work, but What About My Dog? So a lot of people are worried about their dog having gotten to the routine of them being home with them while COVID-19 has been going around. So people at home working are always with their dogs, right? And so the moment that we go back to school or back to work, our dogs are going to be at a loss of where we are. They've gotten so used to us being with them, and now we're gone. So we're seeing a lot of instances of dogs undergoing some type of separation stress. Hi, Miranda. I see that you've said hello. We're going to talk about how to help dogs acclimate to you being away at work now. And this is something that is difficult for dogs to do. A lot of people come home to their house having more chew marks on it, or a dog has peed or pooped and they've normally been housebroken. So it's frustrating for people too. It's as frustrating for people as it is for the dog. So we're here to try and make your life easier and your dog's life easier with the separation stress. So the goal with this kind of training is to get the dog more comfortable with being alone. So we're going to try and do things to build confidence with the dog, and that will help boost independence. Separation stress is something that is different from separation anxiety. Separation anxiety is a label that I like to hold for dogs that are breaking out of windows, chewing holes through doors, mutilating themselves by licking or biting at their tails. So just want to let you guys know that everything that I go over in this webinar is meant for dogs that have separation stress, not separation anxiety. If you have a dog that has separation anxiety that's been doing one or more of those behaviors that I just listed, you're going to have to go to your vet and talk with a licensed canine behaviorist or a dog trainer to help you get through the separation anxiety stuff. So this is a webinar for those dogs that have separation stress. So we're boosting independence by building confidence, and we're doing that by making the dog being by themselves alone something that's not as bad. So the way that we want to try and do this is to try and designate an area in the home that is this dog's safe space. For those of you that have not gone back to work yet, that are still at home, I want you guys to try and figure out what spot in your house the dogs tend to hang out at the most. Normally those spots are going to be where you tend to hang out the most. So like right now in my office, two of my dogs, Lennox right there and Kobe right here, this is where they always are when I am in my office. So when I go home or when I go out to work and they can't come with me, or if I go out grocery shopping, one of my go-tos is to try and have them relax in these areas. So I pick the area that my dog has naturally kind of designated as their safe space. So I want you to try and figure out in your brain where your dog is most of the time when you're at home. Where does your dog naturally settle? It's rare for a dog to just be pacing back and forth, back and forth, back and forth when you're in the house. Normally a dog's going to settle when you settle. So try and figure out where that place is. And when you leave for work, when you leave to go back to school or to go grocery shopping, whatever, I would encourage you to try and bring the dog's crate or close the door to that room where the dog naturally settles on its own. Because the settling behavior is what's hard for these dogs that have that separation stress. So pick out those areas where your dog naturally settles, and that's going to be where your dog should stay during the day. We also want to try and have our house smell the same, sound the same, look the same as it does when we're here with our dogs. So something at my house, the TV is always on. You know, I use it for background noise. I also have lots of fans that are on for background noise. So when I leave the house, the TV is on and the fan is on as well. And so that kind of helps the dog not cue up any kind of feelings of, oh man, something's different, I need to be anxious. Instead, these sounds are very comforting because these are the sounds that the dogs naturally experience when we're home. So try and keep your environment the same. The other thing that you want to try and practice with your dog is to try and have them do a settle in those areas that we've designated, that they've defined as their safe spots. So like in the case of my two dogs in this room, Kobe likes to be on this big beanbag chair. Lennox likes to be on that cushion right there. So part of their training program would be for me to cue them into a down, reward them for that, and then take a couple steps away from the dog and then come right back and reward. Take a couple steps away, come right back and reward. And we want to try and get to the point where we're all the way out of view of the dog, and then we're coming back and the dog's still settling right there. We want to try and practice this regularly so that when we're not there to kind of babysit the dog, when we actually have to leave to go out to go grocery shopping for an hour, we can be confident that because of the training that we've had, the dog is probably still settling in that spot because we've gradually conditioned the dog to be okay with us being out of the room. And I want to emphasize the importance of us really baby stepping this process. I don't want you guys to just cue your dog to lay down and be able to take 5 steps away and immediately feel like you're able to leave and go to the grocery store for 2 hours. That's too much too soon. And when people take too much of a jump between steps, that's where the dog kind of falls apart there. Okay, so just to recap, we're trying to figure out the spots in our home where our dog naturally settles. Those are going to be the areas where we want to put our dogs when we leave to go to work or to school. And then we also want to try and make our house look, smell, and sound the same as it does when we're there. And then we also want to try and work with the dog with some really simple training protocols where we're getting the dog used to settling in the spot that we've chosen to be their settle spot, and we're gradually walking away. In addition to those things, we can try and manage our house to have it be a little bit less arousing for the dog. And by arousing, I mean we want to try and make our house less stimulating. So we want to try and block sight lines to the street. So if, for example, if I'm gone and I've already been gone for an hour and a half and my dog has fallen asleep, which is great, that's what we want. And then an hour and a half after I'm gone into his nap, he hears he sees a pedestrian walking in front of my house. That cues him to get excited and to bark, 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 and he's stimulated. And so he's going to have a hard time coming down from that stimulation to relax again. So we want to try our best to block the visual sight lines to things in the environment that might cue them to get really excited again. So in addition to sights, we also want to try and dampen sound. So those box fans that I told you that I run during the day and the TV kind of helps prevent the dogs from hearing maybe neighborhood dogs barking, prevents them from hearing the Amazon delivery truck guy come out to deliver the packages. It's just a way to dampen the amount of stimulus that they're getting in our house. Because the more stimulated the dog is, just like with people, the harder it is for them to calm down and relax. So that's the management of the house in terms of the visual and auditory stimulus, trying to decrease those things. We also want to try and get our dog into a normal routine. My dogs are all between the ages of 6 to 9 years old. They are older, but they still got a lot of get up and go. So I need to try and get them on a schedule every morning to where they can be comfortable with me being gone at work for 8 hours at a time. There is a method to ordering the kinds of things that you do with your dog to wear them out in the morning. So before I go to work, the first thing that I like to do is take my dogs for a half-hour walk. Know that half-hour walk is going to be stimulating for them. So if after the walk we brought them home and we immediately left to go to work, they might still be really amped up and aroused by how stimulating that walk was. So I like to walk them for half an hour, and then I like to give them an activity that facilitates calm. So walk for half an hour, and then try and get them to work for their breakfast by using a slow feeder toy. And that will give them an activity to do that takes their mind from being really stimulated from that walk and kind of brings them back down. The food toys are a great way to kind of combat stress, because the dogs are having to often sniff and forage for things, which I think is a naturally calming behavior for dogs to do. So we're bringing them up from being excited about the walk, and we're trying to bring them back down with that food toy. So give them the breakfast and the food toy, and do that while you're getting ready for work. So while you're taking a shower, packing your bag, making breakfast and your coffee. These are all things that dogs are aware mean that you're about to go. So try and do all those things while your dog is busy working on a food toy. After my dogs have worked on their food toy for their breakfast, then I get one of their favorite treats, and I cue them to go to their relaxation spot, the place that they're going to be while I'm away at work. And you want this to be voluntary. So for those of you that have taken our advanced obedience class, like impulse control class, it's similar to the mat settle behavior that we do. So when I say, Kobe, go to your room, it's similar to us saying to the dog, Kobe, go to your mat, go to your place. And he knows what that means. So he'll march up the stairs, go to my bedroom, lay on the bed, and go to sleep. For my other two dogs, they go into another bedroom. And then for my fourth dog, she automatically will jump up on the couch in my living room and lay down. And every time that they do that settle behavior, I reward them for that. And that to me makes me know that they know that I'm about to leave and go to work. And so they're like, okay, mom is about to go to work. Now I know what to do. I go up to my place, I settle down, and I try and take a nap. And so that's the goal with these dogs, is trying to get them into that kind of routine. The predictability of a routine is inherently calming, I think, for people and dogs, because they know what to predict. There's no kind of guesswork about, oh, what's going to happen next? I don't know. I'm feeling anxious about it. So if we can get them into a routine where they know, okay, step 1 is happening right now, then step 2, and then step 3, it can be comforting for them. A lot of people that work with dogs that have separation stress, they feel like we need to try and get the dog more acclimated to what's called departure cues. Departure cues are like you getting your keys off the counter, or you putting your laptop bag over your shoulder. And I think that can help, but I think that kind of detracts from my main goal. When I started this webinar, I said my main goal for the dogs is to just be more comfortable with being alone. It's not for them to be more comfortable with context cues. Because not context cues, the departure cues. Because after you depart from your house, dog is alone right now. So just because the dog didn't stress out when you jingled your keys, the moment that you close the door, now he's alone again. And you're not there to try and help him through being alone, right? He's still alone. So we need to try and make him feel better with just being separate from you. So I'm not really someone that feels like desensitizing to departure cues is necessary. I would love for the dog to still be able to relax and be confident in being alone without you and knowing you're leaving, while he's still taking in those departure cues. I hope that makes sense. That sounded very jargony to me. So departure cues, I don't really think they need any kind of desensitization. I still think it's totally okay for you to kiss your dog on the head and pet them and say, hey, I'm going to be gone. I'll miss you. I hope I see you when I come home, right? We'll go for a walk later. I think it's totally okay for you to say that. When you come home from work too, I think it's totally okay to go and love on your dog. I think there's a lot of people that say when you leave to go to work, you should just ignore your dog to help them settle. And then when you come back from work, a lot of people think you should ignore your dog too when they go to interact with you. I don't really think that's necessary. I think the reason why dogs stress out when people leave them is because they don't feel as safe anymore. So if we can do things like pet on them and love them and give them a kiss goodbye to make them feel more safe, I'm going to do it. Okay, so just to recap for those of you that are now watching, the first thing that we want to try and do for our dogs is to try and define a safe spot for them. This safe spot is one that they've already determined for themselves. The safe spot will be the area in your house where your dog naturally settles to begin with. So I use 2 of my dogs here for an example. So whenever I'm in this room, in my study, one of my dogs, Kobe, is always right there, and my other dog, Lennox, is always right there. My other 2 dogs are probably laying on my bed in my bedroom. That's where they go whenever I'm in this room. So your dogs probably already have told you where their settle spot is. This settle spot is the place that you should place your dog when you're away at work. The second thing that we want to do is try and make our house smell, look, and sound the same as it does when we leave. So if you regularly have a TV on, if you regularly have like a Febreze plug-in in, try and keep everything the same. The third thing is to do a training protocol where you cue your dog to lie down in the settle spot, reinforce them for that, take a step away, come right back, take 2 steps away, come right back. Do this systematically, do really tiny baby steps with this. The fourth thing is management. So try and dampen the amount of visual and auditory stimulus that your dog is getting. So if you have a window that faces the street like this one does, I would have these curtains drawn when my dog is in here so that they can't see out that window as easily and get riled up at the sight of a jogger or a biker going by my front window. You also want to try and dampen the sound, so that's where the TV comes into play, the box fan, stuff like that. And then we also want to try and get them on a routine where we're exercising them for half an hour, and then we're giving them a food toy to work on for another 15-20 minutes, and then we leave the house. So yeah, this is the broad picture of how I help dogs with separation stress. I think the biggest takeaway of this is to just try and get the dog into the routine and you into the routine of practicing the routine, and that's going to help you guys out a lot. Something else I want to emphasize for those of you that just logged on is the importance of differentiating between separation stress and anxiety. Separation stress is what a lot of your dogs are probably experiencing. Separation stress is, crying when you're gone, barking a lot, coming back to some chewing, some mild to moderate stress behaviors. Separation anxiety is different than separation stress. That's a label that I like to reserve for dogs that are busting out of windows, chewing holes through doors, hurting themselves because they're so stressed. If you have a dog that fits that category of separation anxiety, I would talk to your vet and seek the help of a professional dog trainer, because that dog is going to need a lot more than everything that I am talking to you about in this live webinar. So now that I've given you my overview of how I condition dogs to be more okay with being alone, I would like to start to run through some questions that I've received from some of you through email. As I am going through these questions, I encourage you guys to think of questions to ask me. You can just write them in the comment box, and I'll try and make sure that I write them down so that I can answer them for you. Okay, so I'm going to go through the questions I already have. Okay, so the first question is, I feel like my dog knows when I'm about to leave the house. What can I do to help break that pattern? So this question is best answered through discussing those departure cues. So remember, the departure cues would be, common ones are picking up keys, putting shoes on, putting like your laptop bag on or getting your briefcase. These are all departure cues. Departure cues mean it's a behavior that a human is doing that the dog knows means that you're about to leave. So a lot of times dogs will get really, really queued up and excited when they see their owners doing this. And I see one question that someone wrote in. That was Amanda Rodriguez. Says, will you post this when you're done? I missed the beginning. Yes, I will post this when I'm done. The live recording should be saved as a video that we can either post on our Facebook page or we can message you. So yeah, don't be afraid that you missed the beginning of this. Okay, so back to talking about departure cues. Common departure cues: picking up keys, putting on shoes, putting your briefcase over your shoulder. These are all things that humans do when they're about to leave the house, and dogs pick up on this. And so when dogs see you do this, they start to cue up anxious feelings about, oh my gosh, mom's about to leave now. Now I need to start to panic. And so a lot of people think that we need to desensitize dogs to these departure cues. I feel like we need to, instead of target making the dog feel more comfortable with you picking keys up and you leaving, we need to go deeper and just make the dog feel more comfortable with being alone to begin with. So yeah, that would be my answer to that. I would say, let's see, my dog knows when I'm about to leave the house. What can I do to help break that pattern? I would say just try and make the dog feel more confident being alone. And we do that through all the things that I discussed earlier. So I don't really think it's necessary to desensitize a dog to departure cues necessarily. I think it's more about building the confidence to have the independence to feel more comfortable being alone to begin with. I hope that made sense. If you have any questions about that, please let me know. Okay, second question. Should I leave the TV or radio on for my dog when I leave the house? My answer to that question would be yes, if you normally have the TV and radio on in your house. So remember, one of the important things that I listed at the beginning of this webinar was that we need to try and make our house look, smell, and hear the same, or sound the same rather, as it does when we're there with the dog. If there's any kind of change in the environment, it can be a way for the dog to know that something's up. So for example, I have the TV on all the time. I use it as background noise. So if I turn off the TV for myself because I'm about to leave, the sound of that going off and not being there is something that's less familiar to the dog, and it's something that only happens when I leave. And so he could be more stressed out just because the backdrop of his life doesn't sound the same. So we want to try and keep everything as even and as normal as possible for the dog if we're here and when we leave. So my answer to that question again, should we leave the TV or radio on when I leave the house, is yes, so long as the TV and radio are normally on to begin with. I think a lot of people have gotten into the kind of trendy thing to do to leave like dog TV on for their dogs. So dog TV, I think it's like a special channel on YouTube, but it's like dogs watching squirrels and wildlife, or dogs playing in a dog park. I think dog TV is actually detrimental to dogs being able to cope with separation stress, because the dog TV normally has sights and sounds on it that would arouse a dog and stimulate a dog. And if our goal is to make the dog feel more settled and relaxed when we're gone, anything that we do to add more excitement is going to combat what we're trying to do to begin with. So just again, try and have it be TV or radio that you normally have on in your house. Don't do dog TV unless dog TV is always on, because that can be more stimulating and counteract what we're trying to do to begin with, which is to try and get the dog more relaxed. Okay, question number 3 on here. My dog likes to look out the window. Is that a good idea when I'm not home? That's another popular thought, is I'm away at work, my dog is probably bored, and I should open up my window so at least my dog can watch squirrels and stuff. I would say no, you shouldn't let your dog look out the window, because that is going to be something that stimulates him. And if the dog is having problems relaxing on his own, again, we don't want to add things to the dog that might make him more excitable and less easy to relax. Krista Walker has a question in the chat box. If the TV is usually on, would the radio be an acceptable substitute? I would ask, why are you needing to switch from TV to radio? If your TV is always on, I would just keep the TV on. I think some TVs might have an automatic timer and they might cut off after 2 hours or 3 hours of inactivity. So if that's the reason why you're thinking you need to switch to a radio, because the radio will continuously be on and not have an automatic off switch, you can download a bunch of movies to a hard drive, and you can plug it in and play them on a loop on your TV. One of our associate trainers, Anthony Rodriguez, does that for his dog. His dog sees probably 4 Disney movies a day while he's away on work. And so those Disney movies on that hard drive are continuously playing, and because they're continuously playing, the TV doesn't cut off. So yeah, to answer that question, I would ask you a question and say, why do we have to go to a radio, and why can't we just leave that TV on? Okay, so question number 4, should I get a Furbo or in-home camera? I feel like I'd constantly watch it to see what my dog is doing. I believe getting a camera is a great tool to invest in to observe your dog's behavior when you're gone. This is a good way to determine what level of separation stress your dog is at. So if we come home from work and we see that a corner of our coffee table has been chewed and the trash can has been flipped over, I would buy a camera, set it up, and I would watch to see how quickly it took my dog to do that. Based off how quickly it took my dog to get into those kinds of things would allow me to determine how severe the separation stress is. So yeah, I think investing in a camera would be a good thing to do for dogs that have separation stress, so that you can get a lot of information about what your dog's behavior is like when you're gone. Red flags that I look for dogs when I'm seeing webcam footage from clients are dogs that are pacing back and forth, 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 back and forth for a really, really long time, and really struggle settling themselves. I mean, if you can imagine being in a situation where you're pacing back and forth for half an hour, you know, that's a situation that's really rough for you. So it's a situation that's also really rough for your dog. So if I observed a dog pace back and forth on a client's webcam for half an hour, I would say this is some more severe separation stress. If a dog is pacing back and forth for 2 to 5 minutes and then eventually jumps on the couch, their settle spot, and settles by themselves, that's a lot better picture. To me, I feel like that dog has a lot better ability to self-calm and self-soothe themselves. So these cameras provide a lot of good information in that way. They do make special cameras called Furbos where you can talk to your dog and administer a food reward. Remember that if we have this camera there and we are treating the dog and talking to the dog throughout the day, what is that doing? That's adding a stimulus to the environment. That's probably exciting the dog and disrupting any kind of relaxation the dog has naturally arrived at. So I would discourage you from getting a Furbo camera for separation stress. Just get a normal webcam so that you can really observe your dog's behavior, so that you can get more feedback about how severe the separation stress is. Another part of this question, which is what this viewer acknowledged, was I feel like I'd constantly watch the camera feed to see what my dog is doing. A lot of people that have dogs that have separation stress tend to also have separation stress themselves. So I'll say that again. People that have dogs that have separation stress tend to also have separation stress themselves. So the person has separation stress from their dog. So if you think that's yourself, and I tend to be one of these people, okay? So I feel like if you are able to constantly look at your dog and check in on your dog every day, you are increasing the amount of stress that you're experiencing. So if you're a person that has anxiety, that has a dog with separation stress, I would not get a camera that you're constantly able to look at, because that's going to make you more anxious about it. I would get a camera that you can record, and then when you get home from your workday, go home and review it. I think there's lots of cameras that hook up to apps on your phone to where you can constantly check in on it. I had a client that would send me videos of her dog like every 15 minutes. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, if you're sending me videos every 15 minutes, I wonder how frequently you're looking at this. And it just made the situation even worse. So there's no need to invest in like really fancy cameras where you can get like a live feed. I don't think if your dog has separation stress, remember, not separation anxiety, separation stress. And like Amanda Rodriguez just wrote, you know, there's normal cameras that are only about $35. So the financial investment in a camera that would serve this function isn't so great that it's going to break the bank. So yeah, so just get a normal camera that maybe you can't access all day, because we don't want you to get more anxious. Just get one that records the 8-hour workday, and then when you get home from work, you can review it then. Okay. All right, so another question. Is there any options besides crating my dog when I leave the house? This is a really, really good question. Crates are often turned to as like a fail-safe tool for dogs that have separation stress. A lot of people just adopted a dog or just had a puppy. They come from work and they're like, oh my gosh, my remote control has been chewed. I know the solution. Let me go and get a crate, stick my dog in the crate, voila, problem fixed, right? The only problem that's been fixed is your remote control not getting chewed up again, okay? The problem that we neglected in that situation was trying to help the dog's emotional state of mind. So if we have a dog that's stressed out because the owner's left, and so it's decided to chew on a remote control to alleviate that stress, and now we're put in a crate that's even more confinement, that's brand new, because mom and dad just went out to buy one and just threw me in there that morning, I'm going to freak out even more. So the crates can add more stress to the situation if we just buy it and throw the dog in there. So crates to most people, I don't think, are the best tool to combat separation stress. Crates are only a good tool for separation stress, I think, if you condition the dog to the crate. If the crate is the dog's designated safe spot, then yeah, crates can be a great way to help the dog combat separation stress. But we have to make sure that the dog likes going into the crate, that the crate is the dog's safe spot. And we don't do that by just throwing the dog in there and locking the door and going to work. There's more work that's involved in acclimating the dog to that space. My dog Kobe here, he loves his crate. He will go in there willingly for a reprieve from my other dogs. And so for Kobe, he has such a good relationship with the crate that he would not mind being crated while I'm at work. So the answer to that question is yes and no. Crates can be a good thing so long as the dog already thinks it's a good thing and it's a natural, safe, settle spot. But they're not the best thing if your dog doesn't love them. You can't just throw the dog in there and lock it and think the problem's fixed. It's not. So the other options to crating are trying to acclimate the dog to just be comfortable in a room. So if we're confident that this dog is potty trained, then and is not going to like jump on the counter and eat all the stuff that you have on your counter. So the dog's not going to jump up and eat these markers, for example, or destroy your friend's DVD collection. As long as we know that the dog's not gonna chew and ingest things that are dangerous, I would encourage you to try and give your dog more space than they would in a crate. For dogs that have stress, just like for people, I think confinement can add to the stress. So giving them more space could help with this. We just want to make sure that they're safe and they're not going to pee and poop all over your house and ruin it. So this goes back to us trying to pick out where a dog's safe spot is and their settle spot. So again, for Kobe and Lennox, they don't have to be in crates because they're house trained and they don't chew on markers and stuff, and I don't leave very dangerous things out for them to accidentally ingest. So when I go for work in the morning, I tell Lennox, go to your room, and she will run up the stairs and lay on this cushion just like that and fall asleep. So that is an alternative to crating. Try and figure out what room of the house your dog feels most comfortable in and leave them in that room during the day. Okay, so next question. I have one dog I trust in the house and another who I do not. Is it okay to leave one out and one in the crate room, etc.? Yes, it is. That's my house every day. I have 4 dogs, 2 of which I trust together. The other 2 I do not trust together because they don't always get along. So I have to separate the dogs in my house. All of them have their own settle spots. I do not think that the dogs will be any more stressed out because they're not with the other dogs in their household. Because the only reason why I think that would stress them out is if they're a bonded pair. So, like the two dogs that I leave together, unsupervised, they're a bonded pair. So if I removed one from the other, that would definitely add to the stress that they're experiencing. But if you have dogs that aren't bonded pairs and don't really rely on each other to feel safe or to have a friend to get them through the day, then I don't believe there's any harm in leaving one out and putting the other one up. If possible, and if you're lucky enough to have a house full of dogs that get along in every situation and you trust them unsupervised together, I would leave them all out together. But if you don't have a household like mine, where I trust my dogs to be good in all social situations, then separating them is completely fine. Again, so long as they're not a bonded pair. So let's see. And another common question, building upon dogs maybe being more or less stressed out without their other dog friend. A lot of people seem to think, and I'm going to write this question down, if I have a dog that has separation stress, will getting another dog make my current dog feel better? I have worked in the shelter world and the rescue world for a long time, for almost 8 years now. And I have seen so many people with adult dogs feel like their dog has separation stress, which I think most of them did. And so they end up getting a puppy or another dog in the home. And they think that because they got their dog a friend, that their dog is gonna have companionship and the stress level is gonna decrease. A lot of times, though, this new friend that they're inviting into their house is a dog that their resident dog didn't pick. It's a dog that the human owners picked. So a lot of people bring this dog home, and the resident dog, instead of feeling less stress, increases in stress. So I would say that getting another dog, adding another dog to the home to try and decrease any kind of separation stress that your resident dog is feeling is not the best option, okay? A lot of these dogs that were gotten, adopted from the shelter, rescued in this way, they ended up being returned back because the resident dog did not like them because they were more stressed by the new dog's presence instead of having a decrease in stress. So that was the last question that I had written in. So I wanted to make a formal ask to all of my audience members if they had any questions about separation stress in dogs. Any kinds of concerns that you might be having about you and your dogs when you go back to work or back to school. So I'm going to give you guys maybe 2 minutes to figure out if you have any questions to ask me. So I'll start those 2 minutes right now. And I'll let you look at my dogs while you think about questions. Say hi, Kobe. So I'm asking you guys if you have any questions about separation stress in dogs. Any concerns that you guys have about going back to work, going back to school, concerns about what your dogs might be experiencing. Opening up the floor to you guys. Any questions? Any questions? I'll give you guys about another minute to think of questions. Again, we're talking about separation stress in dogs. Lennox, you want to say hi? So what kind of fears do you guys have about your dogs being alone when you guys go back to work? Any kind of questions you have? No questions, guys? hope that means I didn't talk too much. Okay. So since you guys didn't have any other questions, I thought of some while I was waiting. I think it's common for people to recommend putting dogs on medicine when their dog is stressed out. I think people jump to medicine a lot. So this question is, should I medicate my dog if it has separation stress? I think that the answer to this question is one that only a veterinarian should answer. Because I'm not a veterinarian, I can't really talk about the answer to this question in detail. But I think that some dogs definitely would benefit from medication, especially if their separation stress is really bad or if they have separation anxiety. It is something that can help. You have to be careful, though, as the human parent of dogs that have medication for separation stress and anxiety. You can't just give the medicine and think that the problem is going to go away. Medication for dogs is something that should be like an aid to a training and management program. Putting your dog on a medication for separation stress, again, it's not just going to snap your fingers and make it all go away. This has to be something that's tackled from a lot of different points, a lot of different angles. So medicine, again, is something that can help. It's something that you have to have a conversation with your veterinarian about to make sure that you're doing it right. And it's not something that you should 100% rely on to fix a problem. Did anybody think of any questions in between when I asked a couple minutes ago to now? Okay, so if nobody has thought of any other questions, I'm just going to try and wrap up the guiding thoughts behind this webinar. So, and I'm going to write these out as I say them so that I can send people interested in this list of things. I can send you these summarized points of this webinar. Okay, so the first thing that we wanted to try and do was define our dog's safe spot. Again, this is a spot where your dog naturally settles during the day. This is the area that you would leave your dog at when you go to work. If your dog is able to be free and loose in the house, when you go to work, I would just try and cue them to lay down on that piece of furniture, your bed, the sofa, wherever it is that they feel comfortable. Try and cue them to go to that place and then leave them in that area. The second part of this webinar, the second guiding principle was try and keep your home smelling the same, looking the same, and sounding the same when you leave as it does when you are there. So if during the day you have a TV on, if you have a fan on, if you have a Febreze plug-in plugged in, if you have your furniture organized in a special way, try and keep it looking the same, smelling the same, sounding the same. Because if we change any part of their environment, it could make it harder for the dog to settle and relax. Okay, so the third part about this is do separation stress training protocols. So this means getting your dog into a down position, lure them into a down position, make it super easy. Do this in your settle spot. After you lure them into the down, you're going to reward them for that down, and then you're going to take one step away and come right back. Do this several times over again, and gradually build the amount of steps that you're stepping away. Get to the point where you can be out the room, so out of the sight line of the dog, and then come back in the room. And then when you're out of sight, you're gradually going to want to build to where you increase the duration with which you're out of sight. I'm writing all this down for you guys. Okay, so with that training protocol, you're also going to try and manage your home environment. So you're going to try and decrease the amount of visual and auditory stimulus in the home. So that means, like, if you were leaving your dog in this room, like what I do with Kobe, I would close this drape to this window so that they can't see outside. So if Kobe was able to see a person walking their dog outside, he would probably be more liable to get up from his settle position and bark, 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 bark. And that would be harder, make it harder for him to come back down into the settle. The other aspect of this is to get your dogs on a normal routine. And the routine has a rhyme and a reason to it. You want to exercise first. So I like to walk my dogs for 30 minutes. Okay, Krista Walker has a great question. She said, would you rename the mat settle if you're sending them to their favorite spot? I would say that the mat could add a good context cue to the situation. So if your settle spot was on your bed and your dog naturally liked your bed, right? Because the dog needs to be kept in a place where it's naturally gonna like to settle and has settled in the past. You could put your mat on your bed and tell your dog to go to its place. And when he does go to his place and settles on the bed, he's already doing the down position, which is what we want. So we're just going to reinforce him for doing that settle position on the bed. So I think you could definitely keep the same verbal cue for your mat settle as you could for your the verbal cue that you give him before you leave to go to work. I want you to keep in mind with this, though, if you know that your dog is going to struggle with being alone during the day, and you know he struggles settling, the sending him to that settle spot with that verbal cue. So I think for Vinny, his verbal cue was place, I believe. I think I'm remembering this correctly, Krista. If we say place, and Vinny goes to his place eagerly because he loves training, and then you're gone for 8 hours, and he really struggles with you being gone for those 8 hours, it might ruin his affinity for hearing the word place. I hope that makes sense. It's called, it's chill. I'm sorry. Yeah, so we might ruin the word chill for him if he really struggles with being alone in that room. That brings me back to just emphasizing the importance of doing the training protocol with this. So we can use the chill for the mat settle while we're doing that training protocol. Remember, where we're putting the mat in that room that he already likes, and for example's sake, your bedroom. We're putting that mat on top of the bed, and we're saying, Vinny, chill. And then he chills and goes right up the bed. We're going to treat that, and then we're going to take a step away, go back until we're all the way out of the room, okay? We want to try and make sure he's really good with that training protocol so that when we say chill and we actually leave to go to work for 8 hours or more, he's not going to be bummed out that chill means, oh my God, mom's going to leave me in this room, close the door, and be gone forever. Okay, so we don't want to poison that cue, all right? So the answer to your question is yes. That's the short answer. Yes, you can still use chill to have him go to his room to relax, but only if we're confident that he's not going to immediately cue up a panic attack afterwards. Yeah, so based off what you just commented, Krista, then I think using the chill cue is going to be great. And having the mat there and him already being very fluent in a mat settle is going to make it a lot easier for him. For my dogs, I say go to your room or go to bedroom. But that's something that I say every night when I go to bed. So we all go up the stairs together and I say, go to your room, and all the dogs just go and settle in their normal settle spot. So my verbal cue to send them to the relaxation spot is different than my mat settle cue, but it's not intentional. It just happened that way. That's a really good question, Krista. Okay, so just going back to the summary of points, we want to try and get our dogs back to a normal routine. And that routine has rhyme and reason to it. So we're going to exercise the dogs for 30 minutes first, a walk or something. And if you can't do 30 minutes, that's fine. If you can only do 15, that's okay. Just try and get them doing something physical. So walking them for 30 minutes. Then after the walk, because the walk was very stimulating, we want to get them started on a food toy. The food toy is going to help bring them back down from being really excited about their walk. And then we are going to send them to their relaxation place. And that is where they are going to stay while we go to work. The relaxation place is a great place to put the webcam that I hope some of you are going to purchase so that you can watch to see if your dog is doing really well with the relaxation training protocol that we discussed earlier. Yeah, so there's a lot involved with this. It's something that, again, I want to emphasize takes time. If you notice your dog struggle at one step of this, just try and do your best to make it easier for them before you go to the next step that they were originally struggling with to begin with. So really, really important to baby step this. While you're working with your dog, being more comfortable with you being home, or with you not being home rather, try and really utilize friends and family members that you have. So for example, if you feel like your dog's good with you leaving the house for an hour, but they're not quite ready for 3 hours, try and see if a friend or family member can come by to check in on them, to give them that kind of the interaction that they want, so where they're not alone. Try and get a friend or family member to drop by and check in on them for you. If you have a lot of disposable income and your dog is dog social, you can also take your dog to a doggy daycare. It's not something that I would recommend that you do every day, but it's something that you can rely on a couple days out of the week to help your dog cope with the stress of you being gone. And then you can also hire dog walkers, someone to come to your house to give your dog attention and some more exercise for you. And they could also probably give the dog the food toy again to try and settle back down. So try and really use all the tools that you can to help you with this. Practice the training protocol. The more that you practice the training protocol, the more that you can rely on the behaviors that training protocol produces when you actually have to leave. So practice. And it does take time, so just be patient with it. I think that I've said all that I've wanted to say about this. If you have any other questions about this, please feel free to email me to let me know. I can put my email address in the description of this video so that you guys can have access to it. And then I'll also put the summary of the guiding principles of how I combat separation stress. I hope you guys learned a lot. It was a lot of fun doing this, and I hope I'm able to do this again for y'all. Thank you. Bye.